So I've been driving through this nice little tunnel of trees here. Sobered up after supper. Nice and spooky. I don't know how well the camera's going to pick it up, but the driveway we're looking for should be somewhere around here. This area is filled with bourgeois, so cautious of them. And it's inhabited, so that's not a burnt down mansion, which is what we're looking for. Also inhabited. And I may have taken a wrong turn, because the road ends here. Let me check my handy dandy little GPS. I tell you, I am falling in love with this whole navigating by, cell phone. Now let me see where it is I am looking for. Let's see. Yeah. Well, pull up off here so we're not noticeable, and I'll give you the backstory on the case. So we don't fall down into the lake. Okie dokie. Let's see here. So I have my notes. Oh, this is still the werewolf thing. There we go. So, the Lamont House. So, Lamont House, now more commonly known as Summerwind, was built in 1918 by Robert Lamont who was a prominent Wisconsin politician, named Secretary of Commerce by President Hoover in 1929. In spite of the nonsense that more revered ghost hunters and I have written, the Lamont House had no reputation of being haunted until in 1969 some fucking boomers bought the house. Now in the late 60s and early 70s, kitsch was in full swing. Fine parquet floors had shag carpeting just crudely stapled on top of them. Fine dark red and green silk wallpapers inlaid with just gold thread were torn down and chucked in dumpsters so that they could be replaced with turquoise polka dots or crudely drawn murals of whatever the hell. Any furniture which was comfortable or aesthetically pleasing was thrown away and replaced with beanbag chairs and scrap metal interpretive art. Cheerful functional kitchens were torn out to make room for multiple refrigerators full of microwave meals. Boomer houses are truly hell on earth. Just carpeted bathrooms and clashing colors and all sorts of ugh. Yeah. Well, I mean, in the summer of love, this seemed like this was going to be the absolutely inescapable fate of the Lamont House. However, didn't quite end up being that way. So, to explain what happened to Arnold and Ginger Hinshaw, I turn now to my reference book. Jump cut. Oh. And jump cut over. So, these two couldn't get anyone to work on their new mansion they'd bought. Anyone they called to the house would either not show up because, spooky haunted house, or because some unfortunate accident would befall them. So eventually they decided to not take the hint and just begin remodeling themselves. And from here on, this is a direct quote from a book. Oh, they decided that the first place they would start painting was their bedroom. Unaccustomed to this kind of work, they made a mess of it at first, but eventually they figured out how to get most of the paint on the wall. Always a good start. They had finished with the room and were about to move on to another when they realized they hadn't painted their bedroom closet. Thinking it would look strange if the interior of the closet was a different color than the walls surrounding it, they opened it up, assuming it would only take a few minutes. It had lived there for a few months by this time and had used the closet to store their clothes. It was only now, as they began painting it, that they discovered that the shoe cupboard in the back was not attached to the wall, but could be moved out of the way. Assuming that there was more wall behind it that needed to be painted, they lifted the cupboard out and discovered that it had been hiding a large hole in the wall. "What is that?" asked Arnold. "Some sort of secret passageway?" "No," said Ginger. "I think it's just a hole in the wall." One moment, please. Oh, DDT is good for me. Don't do that. That'll give you cancer. Okay. Deciding that their discovery deserved further investigation, Arnold fetched a flashlight and shined it into the dark crevice. "Honey," he said to his wife as the beam of his flashlight hit on something that looked unpleasantly familiar, "what does this look like to you?" Ginger took the flashlight from her husband's hand and shined it into the hole. "Arnold," she said quietly, "is that a body wedged inside our wall?" "I think it is," he answered her. "A human body?" she continued, wanting further clarification. "That would be my guess," he continued. Or he agreed. By this time the two of them had blah 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 blah. Oh. A clear sign of how inured they had come to the horrors of their house can be seen in what they immediately chose to do upon making their discovery. Because it was hard to tell, thanks to the plumbing that was in the way, if the human body shape they had seen really was a human body, they needed someone small enough to crawl inside the hole and get a better look. Kids, Ginger called for their children, "Come into Mommy and Daddy's room." All 6 children scurried into the room from whichever corner of the house they had been in and looked expectantly at their parents. It is at this point you may realize, gee, if ever there were a pair of people who deserved to be driven from their house in terror, it was probably these folks. Oh. Realizing at that moment that it might not be smart to tell them the whole truth about the situation, Ginger came up with a more palatable story to tell them. "Hey guys," she said in that patronizing voice adults adopt when they want to dupe a group of small children, "your dad and I think that the silly billies who made this house did something crazy. We think they took a bear and put him inside the wall behind our closet. Isn't that silly? The problem is that we can't get a good look to see if they did it or not, so we're going to need one of you to crawl into the space and tell us for sure." "Okay." Like most kids their ages, they were full of the bravery that comes from not fully being able to contemplate their own mortality. "I'll do it, Mommy," volunteered Mary, age 8. Ginger handed her daughter a flashlight, and the little girl got on her knees and squeezed into the hole. She stayed in there for about a minute before she crawled back out. "Mommy," she said with total authority, "that isn't a bear, it's a man." Wanting to share in the fun, all of the other children insisted on getting a look at the human corpse inside of the wall. "We were good parents before we moved into this house, right?" Ginger asked her husband as their young children took turns inspecting the corpse. This was confirmed by their children. "Okay, kids, you have to promise me that you won't tell anyone about this because it's a game. The object of the game is to keep it a secret forever. What do we win? How about some ice cream?" Oh, after getting the kids their promised treat, Ginger waited until she and Arnold were alone again before she brought up the subject of the body hidden behind their bedroom closet. How could it have even gotten there? Ginger asked her husband. The guy must have been murdered while they were building the house, speculated Arnold. But wouldn't the men who built the house have seen a body in the wall? I don't know. Maybe they were in on it. Should we go to the police? What are they going to do? Asked Arnold. The guy's been dead for 50 years. Whoever murdered him is probably dead by now, too. All calling the cops is going to do is cause a bigger... Contacting the authorities about the corpse sealed inside of our wall is only going to damage our investment property. Boomers. Fucking boomers. Holy shit. All calling the cops is going to do is cause an even bigger hole in our closet as they break through our wall and plumbing to get that sucker out of there. Is that really a smart thing to do considering our track record with subcontractors? We couldn't get anyone to come over to paint the place. How well are we going to do getting someone to repair broken pipes and drywall? I suppose you're right, said Ginger. I say we keep quiet about this up until the point when he starts stinking up the place, and if he hasn't started yet after all this time, I doubt he's going to start any time soon, said Arnold. I just don't know if I like the idea of sleeping in that room knowing that he's there, said Ginger. We'll switch with one of the kids. They won't care, said Arnold. That night, Arnold nailed a piece of wood over the hole, which they then painted over. These people deserved everything that happened to them. Not long after discovering the corpse in their wall, Arnold started playing his Hammond organ. True, he had played it before they moved into the mansion, but back then he played it like an organ enthusiast who needed the practice. Now he played it like a demented count in a gothic horror movie. He often waited until the middle of the night to start playing his dark opuses. They consisted of long compositions that worked hard to avoid the pleasing sound of melody in favor of a droning hum. His songs kept everyone in the house awake, and most nights all 6 children would join their mother in her bed and huddle together, praying that their father would get better. One night he was working his way through the most discordant of his sinister sonatas when he stopped mid-note and collapsed loudly to the floor. Ginger found him lying there in a state of catatonic shock. She called an ambulance, and after the doctors had diagnosed his collapse as a complete mental breakdown, they sent him to a local psychiatric hospital. Ginger was now left alone to raise their 6 children in the haunted mansion that was their home. Ever a strong woman, she soon felt herself succumbing to the same dark forces that had overcome her husband. Each day in Summerwind grew harder and harder to get through. She could not escape the constant whispering of the spirits, nor could she forget the corpse wedged behind the wall of the master bedroom closet. Her nerves frayed past the breaking point, and she decided that she would do anything to have a sense of peace again. Anything turned out to be swallowing a lot of sleeping pills and chasing them down with a bottle of vodka, also known as My Friday Night. Please help me. She was found by one of her children. Okay, finding a human corpse and then sending your children to investigate it so you don't have to is one thing. Who kills themselves in such a way that the first person to find your corpse will be your children? Who does that? Oh, she was found by one of her kids before her deadly cocktail could take effect. An ambulance was called and her stomach was pumped and she lived to see another day. Just not in Summerwind when she became well enough to leave the hospital. Oh, no. When she became well enough to leave the hospital, she did not go back to her haunted home. She and her children instead went to live with her parents in Granton. Finally, here's where it gets good. Following the devastation of their mutual breakdowns, Arnold and Ginger divorced. Because of course they did. For a time it seemed as though the horror Ginger had gone through at Summerwind was behind her. She met a man named George, married him, and moved out of her parents' house. By that point, the haunted mansion she had once called home was just an unpleasant memory. And then her father had a dream. Raymond Bober had been working as a popcorn vendor during the time his daughter was suffering through the miseries inflicted upon her by the spirits of Summerwind. As he heard her tales of what was happening to her at the mansion, he became more and more fascinated with the world of the paranormal. He started reading every book he could find on the subject and started attending local seances. Remember, this is the 1970s. As well as experimenting on his own with an antique Ouija board, also known as a children's toy from the mid-19th century. Literally a children's toy. It's just, I hate Ouija boards, which is how it's actually supposed to be pronounced. I hate them. They're not real. They don't do anything. If you're gonna try and contact spirits, just, like use a sandboard filled with like talcum powder or something. As well as experimenting on his own with a Ouija board and learning the art of self-hypnosis. Again, this is the 1970s, so when he says the art of self-hypnosis, he actually means consuming a large quantity of psychoactive drugs, probably while staring at a lava lamp. But it was in the world of dream that Ginger's father got his first clue that he was destined to return to his daughter's former home and search for a treasure he believed would be worth millions. It was while dreaming that he also learned the identity of the ghost that had caused his daughter so much distress. In his dream, he found himself surrounded by hundreds of Native Americans, hundreds of them, in their traditional tribal garb. It's the 1970s, so that means feathered headdresses, I guess. From amongst them, a white man appeared to Raymond and said, "I brought these people peace, and for that they granted me a tremendous gift. Search for me in the spirit world and help me reclaim it. If you do, then I shall let you reap its incredible rewards." With that, the dream ended, leaving Raymond to discover on his own what it had meant and who he should be looking for. Over the next few days, he spent many hours playing with a children's toy and consuming LSD so that he would be more receptive to messages from beyond. Slowly, he began to gather the information he was searching for. One night, he was given a first name, Jonathan. A few days later, a surname arrived to complete the clue, Carver. He could have been told that the guy's name was Jonathan. He probably wouldn't have questioned it. That's the most generic name. Thanks to more traditional research, also known as actual research, which allowed him to ask the right questions when he communed with the spirits, he was able to piece together the narrative that explained what he had seen in his dream. Jonathan Carver was an English explorer. Not British, he was English. This was pre-active unification even. This dude crossed the Atlantic in a caravel, apparently. Who in the late 1700s, nope, I'm sorry, he was, well boy, that doesn't make sense. Almost as though this is just the result of a long acid trip. Who in the late 1700s traveled through the state that would become Wisconsin. During these travels, he found himself caught in the middle of a war being waged by two different nations of Sioux. Thanks to a mixture of bravery and luck, he was able to convince the chiefs of the warring nations to meet with him, because why wouldn't the chiefs of two powerful nations meet with some random white dude named John? And together they reached a deal for peace. As thanks for helping him to end their long and bloody war, both chiefs signed a deed that turned over to him a large portion of their land, a portion that today would encompass nearly 1/3 of northern Wisconsin. protect this precious document, Carver sealed it in a black box, which in a series of twists and turns that Raymond was never fully able to work out, maybe he ran out of drugs, ended up hidden in the foundation of a famous Wisconsin mansion. A place the children's toy told him was called Summerwind, which was not the actual name of the house. He made that up. Some would call it a coincidence, others would call it fate, and I would call it incredibly stupid. Ginger didn't care either way. All she knew was that her father was telling her that he was planning on buying the house that had driven her to attempt suicide and ended her marriage. Ginger did not want to go back to the house that had wreaked so much ruin upon her life. Nevertheless, when it became clear that her father could not be talked out of his decision to buy the house, search for the lost deed, and convert the building into a restaurant, she returned with him to the mansion to explore its mysteries. The thought of what they would find made her stomach churn, especially the thought of a particular skeleton in the closet. Joining Ginger and her father were her new husband George and her brother Carl. They were both familiar with the stories Ginger had told them about what she had seen happen in the house, but neither of them was ready to accept her version of events. Though both she and her ex-husband suffered major breakdowns owing to their time at Summerwind, it was still hard to believe that there was not a more rational explanation for the couple's emotional collapses. They were just as reluctant to buy into Raymond's theories regarding the house, but they both agreed that a restaurant in a beautiful house by the lake could turn out to be a financial success. Probably the craziest part of this story because, may I remind you, this is where they wanted to build a restaurant. Like, the main road is a half-hour drive back that way. It's a half hour over just single-lane dirt roads. Yeah, so real sound decision-making on everyone's parts here in this lovely, enchanting tale of why we don't deserve good things. The three men toured around the house with Raymond looking for places where his imaginary friend's black box could have been stowed, and George and Carl looking for ideas on how it could be best transformed into a restaurant. Ginger stayed alone in the kitchen, which was one of the few spots in the house where nothing strange had ever occurred. Presumably they had not attempted to remodel that one in their time at the house. She was prepared to remain there for the entire day, but she changed her mind when she heard her husband come downstairs from the second story to go outside through the front door. Wanting some fresh air, she decided to join him. As she stepped out the front door, she saw that he was getting something from the trunk of his car and asked what it was. "This," he answered her by holding up a crowbar. "What do you need to use that for?" she wondered. "We were looking around the bedrooms and we saw that in the big one's closet, someone nailed a board to the wall. We wanted to remove it so that we could see what it was covering up." All of the color drained out of Ginger's face. "What's wrong?" asked her husband. "You can't remove that board," she told him. "You have to leave it there. We did that for a reason." "What are you talking about?" he asked her. "You can't remove that board," she repeated, her voice reaching the outer edges of hysterical. "You can't." George put down the crowbar, rushed over to his wife, and grabbed her by the shoulders. He spoke to her in a calm but authoritative tone. "Ginger," he said, "you have to calm down and tell me what you were talking about." It took several minutes, and then going back inside to the kitchen where she belonged, before Ginger relaxed enough to tell the three men why she didn't want them to remove the board from the closet. "I promised I'd never tell," she told them. "We should have gone to the police, but Arnold didn't want to, and I was so confused." "Ginger, what happened?" asked her father. There's a body behind the closet, she told them. It's hidden by all sorts of pipes and wooden beams, but it's there. But that's impossible, insisted Carly. We'd be able to smell it if it was there. Do you think this house cares if something is impossible or not? She asked him. I know what I saw. I know what Arnold saw. And I know what my children saw. Your children? Asked George. We sent them in there to get a better look, she admitted. We told them it was a bear, but none of them bought it. Let's see. So they took off the board from the wall of the closet. Thanks to the crowbar, it took less than 20 seconds to pry loose the board. Shoddy carpentry on their part, big surprise, which revealed a dark hole. A flashlight was found and shone into the hole and revealed nothing. All they could see was exactly what anyone could reasonably expect to find behind a wall and nothing more. George went back down to the kitchen and told his wife that they did not find the body she had described. What do you mean? She asked him. He's right there behind the wall. I'm serious, sweetie, he told her. There's no one there. You're all crazy, she insisted, as she started running to the bedroom to prove that what she had seen was still there. But it wasn't. Where did it go? She asked as she stared into the hole and saw nothing but pipes and wooden beams. Where did the body go? I should have bought bug spray. Jesus. This is made out of 0.5% permethrin. Don't apply in a way that will contact children directly or through drift. Do not allow adults or pets to enter until sprays have dried. Do not apply to product in a way that will contact adults or pets. Do not make applications during rain. Shake well before using. So I'm really not supposed to put that on my skin. The next weekend, Carl returned to the house by himself. He was there to find out how much it was going to cost to rebuild the well out back and to hire an exterminator to take care of the bats housed in the mansion's attic. Don't do that, by the way. Bats help with insects. As long as they aren't coming into the main house, they're actually good. Mostly. His experience at the house the weekend before had done little to convince him that Summerwind was haunted. In fact, by the time he left, all he felt he knew for sure was that his sister had probably not completely recovered from her mental breakdown. He could tell by the way she reacted when they opened up that hole in the bedroom closet that she truly believed she had seen a human body stuffed in there all those months ago. He wondered, as he did some work on the front lawn before the exterminator arrived, what could have happened to her that would have made her mind play such cruel tricks on her. It didn't take him long to find out. As he worked outside, he felt a few stray drops of water hit him from above. Speaking of which, it actually looks like it's going to rain. He looked up and saw several serious-looking storm clouds in the sky. He managed to make it inside the house, just as those clouds opened up and brought on a powerful thunderstorm that aided immeasurably, giving the old house a spooky aura even Carl couldn't deny. I could use a thunderstorm right now. These bugs are unpleasant. Remembering that he had left a window open upstairs, Carl ran up to close it before the rain could get in. As he walked down the hallway toward the room the window was in, he heard the sound of someone calling his name. "Who's that?" he asked aloud. "Is that you, Frank?" he asked, saying the name of the exterminator he had talked to on the phone. How much time do I have? Yeah. No one answered him. Must have been a trick of the storm, he decided, like a Oblivion NPC. Before he went into the room he had been heading for and closed the open window. Just as he brought the frame down, he heard the same sound again, and this time he could tell for sure that it definitely wasn't thunder or a loud wind. It was someone shouting his name. "What?" he shouted back. "What do you want?" Again, no answer. Earl was finally getting spooked about being in the big house alone. He walked downstairs and suddenly flattened himself to the ground when he heard the sound of 2 gunshots ring through the house. Earl was very familiar with guns and knew that what he had heard could not be mistaken for the thunder outside. Convinced that someone was stalking him inside the house, Carl cautiously got up. He could smell gunpowder in the air. He searched the house for the shooter, but it soon became clear that he was completely alone. Just as he was starting to think he was as crazy as his sister, he discovered 2 bullet holes in one of the kitchen walls. They were enough to convince him that it would not be wise for him to spend the night at the mansion. He decided not to wait for the exterminator. He wasn't coming anyway, because he had been detained by the storm. Remember, it's all dirt roads out here. And he got in his car and drove back home. Just as it had when Ginger and Arnold attempted it, Summerwind managed to resist Raymond's every attempt to renovate it. He had no better luck than his daughter and former son-in-law in getting subcontractors and other laborers to come to the house. For a time, he and his wife Marie lived in a trailer outside the home. Eventually, after he had spent countless hours chipping away at the building's concrete foundation, which is real smart, in search of Carver's black box, he admitted defeat and abandoned the idea of claiming the lost deed as his own and turning the mansion into a successful restaurant. By the way, I did some digging. He never had a deed to the property. He abandoned it because legally he wasn't allowed to be there. He was just trespassing on someone else's land, destroying the foundation of their house, until he was chased out by threat of legal action. It turned out to be a wise decision. In 1983, a writer named Will Pooley decided to investigate Raymond's claims about Carver's deed. In his research, he discovered that even if Raymond had found such a deed on the property, it wouldn't have been worth the paper it was printed on for multiple reasons. First off, because the Indians didn't have paper. During the period when this deed was supposedly created, the reigning British government had already ruled that individuals could not receive property from Native Americans. Even if there hadn't been such a ruling, the Sioux never owned any property in northern Wisconsin for them to give away in the first place. Almost like this guy was, just high out of his fucking, yeah. Still, it wasn't a total loss for Raymond. Under the pseudonym Wolfgang von Bober, Maxwell Lubeck is my slave name. From now on, I will be referred to only by my German tribal name of Markgraf von Landstadt. Under the pseudonym Wolfgang von Bober, he published a book called The Carver Effect in 1979. In it, he described his experiences communing with Carver's spirit and his unsuccessful attempts to renovate Summerwind. He claimed it was Carver's spirit that had been responsible for keeping both he and his daughter from doing any work on the house. He also claimed that the mansion's original owner, Robert Lamont, once fired 2 shots at Carver's ghost, which is where the 2 bullet holes come from. That's bullshit, by the way. That's where that claim comes from. You'll see that repeated everywhere you research that. That's not true. Which was how he explained what had happened, blah, blah, blah. After Raymond gave up on the house, also known as being asked politely to leave because he was trespassing on someone else's property and destroying it and attempting to turn it into a restaurant in the middle of nowhere, it quickly fell into disrepair. In 1986, 3 investors purchased it, also with the intention of turning it into a restaurant. By that time, rich people had set up back on that lake over there. Might have worked a little bit better. Still, not something I would have chosen that seems like a bizarre idea. They too were foiled by a bizarre inability to get anyone to come and work on the place. After 2 years, they were forced to give up on their plans. Lightning struck the mansion and burnt it to the ground. Except it didn't. Give me a moment. Ooh, let me see. Yeah. Boy, can you imagine hating boomers enough to just will yourself back from a cold, dark grave to prevent them from, yeah. Well, Robert Lamont was apparently that dude. So, yeah, the locals never believed that the house was haunted. I found one interview with the nephew of one of the neighbors who claimed that he and his friends used to play in the abandoned mansion's basement, and that much of its reputation comes from local kids intentionally spooking tourists. In 1985, the local authorities in Land O'Lakes, which is way over there, got tired of the constant string of vandals and tourists coming into this wealthy area full of mosquitoes, and they made an attempt to have the house demolished. They failed. Then in 1988, the neighbors down here received a notice that the fire department would be conducting a controlled burn on the old property, and that night the house burnt to the ground. This was declared the result of a lightning strike, and local police have declined to investigate. The ruins have actually been bought by Eau Claire natives, which is a wild coincidence. And I'm going to roll up the windows so that I'm not killed by insects. Wait until it gets nice and dramatically dark, then I'm going to get in there and see if I can get you some video footage of the stuff, the things, you know. Okay, so what's happening here is I'm hiking through a forest wearing a Russian surplus long coat, carrying an obsolete handgun, a machete, and basically a handheld lantern on my way to explore an abandoned house. I have reached peak stalker. So, let's get to that house. Alright, and here's where our off-road adventure starts. Just have to find a way through this creepy looking pine forest to hill overlooking the lakeside. So very Blair Woodsy. I don't know how well the camera's picking this up. Yeah. So the original plan was wait till the thunderstorm that's supposed to sweep this area to start, then back in here in my good clothes, some torches and whatnot, try some absolute nonsense, but you know what? I'm feeling merciful. I have a lovely time out by the lake. There's a lot of burnt stuff here. I've had a lovely time out by the lake. I think gonna just let it go. And there we go. This is it. Our haunted house. And a porta-john. Yeah, let me put down my machete. Turns out it's not really needed. being kept clear for me. Yeah. So I've decided, after my previous trouble with insufficient lighting, I will no longer be taking chances. Everything will be lit up excellently. Yeah, it looks like this place has already been largely salvaged. Not much left. See the old boiler. Oh, let me see. There's the old porch. Let's try and get down there without breaking her neck. See if we can spot any of the scrape marks that old Wolfgang von Bober made while he was searching for his imaginary box. Not much of the foundation left, honestly. Being exposed to a Wisconsin forest for 30 years will do that to you, I guess. Yeah. Well, boy, there were a lot of iron fittings in this house. Even with, I presume, most of them taken out, there's still quite a bit here. There's a little bit broken out of that wall, but I assume that's been done later. Nothing really of historical value. I apologize if I'm not getting these shots excellent. Oh, that's collapsed. As has that. Well, here is one of the most imposing arguments for building your house in the traditional style of construction. It leaves behind some pretty impressive ruins. Well, this place must have been a sight to see back when it was still not burnt down. So evidently, this stairway, well actually let's see if I can see the lake from the porch up here. I can certainly hear it. At least I can hear something big down there. There's, yeah. No, fortunately it's all blocked by trees. This still seems pretty solid. Let's see, it used to be all paved with brick. This used to look right out over the lake. See if we can find the old boat house that's supposedly down here. Well, I gotta say, this place really doesn't feel haunted to me. It might be if I miss one of these fucking steps. People have been taking parts of them for souvenirs. So apparently this used to be a path down to the old boathouse by the river. Or lake, rather. Still see a bit of construction material. Let's try to navigate our way down this. Dark by lantern light. Wearing cowboy boots. Metal. That must be the old boat dock, all stacked up. Yeah, the house is completely hidden behind those trees. You know, pine grows fast after a fire. So, you can really tell this place was burnt to the ground by the fact that there's all this pine here. I almost fell there. Yeah, there's the lake. The boathouse is completely gone, but you can see by the way these trees are leaning out. This area suffered some serious subsidence. Yeah. Well, that's that. Here to tell you. Doesn't feel supernatural. I think I'd rather just leave it be. Even if it isn't haunted now. At one point, I guess one of its previous owners really felt strongly about keeping the place nice and restful. So, yeah, maybe I'll just respect that and leave it be. There's a hole in there. Wonder how much of that is hollow. I suppose it's loose stone. Really, it's all hollow. Boy, navigating up here in the dark isn't the easiest thing in the world. But now that we are back out the same way we came in, which involves going in. Boy, that is a dramatic sight. Building this place must not have been easy. Well, I mean, so one other thing I noticed on the way in is there is still a driveway. I could have just driven in here and skipped all the hooey. Well, yeah, just not much left. Which is a real shame, because this is the last big ticket item I had. After this, it's just all vacation photos. I don't really want to wake the old place up. Yeah, I'll let him go. Let this place stay nice and peaceful until the next idiot with a lantern walks up to it. Where the hell did I come in from? Well, there's the two old barrels. So, this way. The entire rest of this area is just so lush and beautiful. You have this area, which is actually away from the main house. It does get a bit spooky. Well, I have a long night's drive ahead of me as I figure out my way out of this. Let's see how close I can get to Marquette. Hopefully without getting pulled over by the cops, because Michigan is in some weird laws. Oh, this is basically a dead end. I can't get through that. Let's follow the light poles. Yeah, Michigan has some weird laws about firearms, which I'm not going to comply with, so... Is that my fucking truck? Why are the damn headlights on? Oh, on the main road, I assume. A lot of owls. Oh. Guess it wasn't my truck. Where did I leave my machete? Oh, I left it back at the house on the porch. I'll just drive back and get it. There's a street sign down there, or a address placard. That's where the road ends. Yeah, this camera cannot see anything at night, but I assure you, my night vision is slightly better, so... That's not an owl. That's a coyote. If that's where the reports of screams come from. Nervous city people hearing coyotes. Alright, here it briefly becomes paved. Gonna take a right. Keep on straight up to the truck. Trying to be somewhat quiet because people live around here for a few months a year, you know, rich people. Yeah. Does look like it's gonna thunder up a mighty storm. Can't see any stars, and it's actually gotten a bit warmer out. Ah, there it is. Alright, well, back to pick up my machete, and off I go. Hopefully I can be on the main roads before the thunderstorm starts. Yeah. Check, make sure there's no one in there. Yeah. Alright. I'll turn on the camera one more time to show the mansion before I drive off after I've ramped up my little thing. I've pressed something. Yeah, alright, well, I'm gonna start driving. So I made it out of the dirt roads before the storm hit, which is a good thing, because from the way that lightning looked over the lake, and I kind of wish I'd had the camera out during that. Looks like this is going to be one of the bigger storms that I've ever been in. So, yeah, all we have left is county roads until we get up through the UP of Michigan.